My name is Victoria Aragon, and I am with Team Nicaragua for 2020 this year. And today we're going to be talking about blindness. So, as you may know, in Nicaragua, we will be traveling to a school for students with special needs. And in this school, there are children ranging from age 3 to 18, I believe. And there are specific classrooms for each necessity. So, for example, there are classrooms for children with autism. There is a classroom for children that suffer from blindness. There are classrooms for children who have cerebral palsy, and so on. And today, since we will be working with students who are blind, I will be talking to you about what causes it and what strengths and how it affects these students. So, first of all, what is blindness? So, blindness is when a person or an animal is unable to see due to an injury, disease, or congenital conditions, which are birth defects. And the main reason that I believe many of these students do suffer from blindness may be from birth defects, but there may be other reasons as well. So, blindness can be a result of injury, specifically of head trauma. So, one of the ways is when the optic nerve, which is located in the back of the eye, can be damaged, and this causes those nerve cells to die. So, there is a word for this, and it is abbreviated as TUN, which stands for traumatic optic neuropathy, and this unfortunately is irreversible. Another way that a head injury can cause irreversible blindness is injury to the occipital lobe, which is located in the back of your head. And this is the center for your vision, for your eyes. And when that is damaged, there could be a lot of visual impairments and could also lead to irreversible blindness. The way that diseases can cause blindness, one of the main diseases is glaucoma, which is when the retinal neurons that send signals from the eye to the brain, they end up dying. And this is progressive. So it is not that you go to sleep one night and you wake up and you can no longer see. It is progressive, and this is typically seen in older people, but in some cases it can be seen in children. Diabetes can also be a cause of blindness. For children, it would be type 1 diabetic. And this is called diabetic retinopathy, which is when the blood flow to the eye is restricted or stopped. And this causes severe loss of vision or blindness. This makes sense since the insulin is no longer regulating the glucose, and the glucose builds up in the blood vessels. Another way is through infections in the eye. This can happen through a little piece of dirt or something else getting into your eye that you don't want to be in there. And those infections, if not treated with antibiotics, can lead to irreversible blindness. Birth defects can also be a cause, which is what I believe would be what is most common for the reason of blindness in this school, since these children are very young. This could be through genetic mutations or infections. The infections would be typically when the mother is pregnant with the child developing an infection. And this can also come through premature birth, nutritional deficiency, and vitamin A deficiency. Vitamin A is very beneficial for vision, and when there's a deficiency, they can lead to blindness. Genetic mutations are very common for students, even who have visual impairments. Myself, I do have a genetic mutation that caused me to be born with visual impairments, which there are treatments such as laser, but those are very expensive. So, how does it affect a student's learning? We know that it will affect a student's life, but its learning, it also takes a toll on it. Overall, it will take a longer time for the student to comprehend, not only because a lot of students benefit from having a visual aid. It will be harder for them to be able to read the the instructions. There is Braille, which is when there are dots poked into paper, and each segment of dots, I believe one dot represents an A. And I don't really know what the rest of the dots mean, but I know that they go scanning through the Braille and they can read. However, it does take 6 to 8 weeks for a sheet to be translated to Braille. And that can also be very costly, especially if the classroom is reading a book. To have the whole book translated into Braille is a very long process. As I was saying, students benefit from having something at their side, such as notes. And there are ways for students to take notes, such as the typewriters that speak out to them what they are typing. There's also voice recorders where they can listen to their notes and the lectures. But it is very difficult because it takes a lot of extra steps, which leads to longer time. Students may also feel isolated from their peers. I know I can't imagine how difficult it must be to not be able to participate in many activities or play many games. And this can cause a lot of lack of motivation or inspiration, and it could cause a lot of trouble in the classroom from simply just not wanting to be there or not paying attention or being distracted. For students who just have a visual impairment, which are not completely blind, headaches are very frequent from the eye strain, and in countries such as Nicaragua, where a large majority of the population is below the poverty line, it is difficult to have glasses, and it's recommended to have your eyes checked each year. So even if the student would have a pair of glasses, the chances that those glasses, that prescription is outdated is very high, and it just causes a lot of headaches throughout the day. However, there are some positive sides. Their auditory and their tactile learning is increased, and as well as their taste buds and their sense of smell. Just all their other senses are heightened. They're much more advanced than a student. It is said that they're much more advanced than a student who has all their functioning senses. And through that, we can do things to help them learn. So since they are very high in auditory learning, we could use songs and rhymes to remember a math formula or to walk through the steps of an essay. There are also audiobooks to improve vocabulary and to expand their knowledge. And there's also music class, which I found to be very beneficial when they can play piano, the recorder, and just memorize the keys. For their tactile learning, in art class, making clay sculptures, it taps into their imagination and they can identify what they're making. Identification of shapes, because they're very tactile, to identify that this is round, this is pointy, it has 3 points, this is a triangle, and so on. So there are different ways to get the lessons across. You just have to really be thinking outside of the box. Now, as we can imagine, this not only affects their student life, but it affects their everyday life. Unfortunately, until they do become experts in how to identify and how to just use all their senses and everything around them, they will need to rely on a person to help them get around. They also cannot have the life that others carry, and that is very difficult. I can't imagine how difficult that must be, but there are a lot of different ways to get around it. Unfortunately, a lot of treatments are expensive. As I was saying before, there is no cure for blindness. At least it has not been found yet. And even if there is, it may not be very accessible to the students who are in Nicaragua. And looking again at the positive side, it does get them to create a grand imagination, especially if they had a little bit of vision before they were completely blind. That imagination would be heightened. So one way I would try to get a lesson across, or do my best to, would be through sounds, through their auditory. And for my specific lesson plan, if I were to be in this classroom, which it is not certain what classrooms we will be in, if we will be able to visit every single classroom, but in case I would be in this classroom, my lesson plan would be onomatopoeias. So it would be on language arts. And as we know, onomatopoeias are words that describe sounds that are made by everyday objects or animals. And one of my ending activities would be helping them create their own onomatopoeia, a sound that identifies them, as well as working on identifying if that sound is near or farther, which would also prepare them for when they may be on their own and they have to use everything around them to identify what is happening. So I am very excited for this trip. I am also very nervous because I have not been that exposed to people who are completely blind. In my family, I do have a lot of people who are visually impaired, myself included. But it will be a new experience, and I'm so ready for it. My heart just warms thinking about the classrooms. So I hope we can go this year and that everything turns out perfect. So yeah, thank you.